Good morning, world. Cece here. I wanted to try something a little different over the next few episodes. Instead of just talking about ideas, I want to talk about questions. Because sometimes the right questions can change everything. So here's the first one. How do you find peace in the middle of chaos? Because let's be honest, life isn't always calm. It's not always predictable, and it's most definitely not always fair. Things happen that we don't plan for, or we didn't expect, and we definitely didn't ask for it. And yet, they happen anyway. I've spent a lot of time over the years reading and learning about the mind, how we think, how we respond, and how we create our experiences. So, I understood the idea of peace and chaos. But in 2018, I actually had to live it. When my town became engulfed in fire and I had to evacuate, it was chaotic. Traffic everywhere, panic. The energy was intense. My phone was ringing nonstop. My cats were screaming in the car. There was fear, real fear. And there were moments where that fear got stronger. But then there were moments where I stopped and I held on to something deeper. I remember thinking to myself, I know that I have more life in me. And I knew I was going to be okay. How did I know that? I don't know. It was something deep in my core. But I made a decision in that moment not to go to the alternative. Because I understood enough about the mind to know that where I chose to go mentally mattered. And in the next 6 months to 2 years after that, and losing 90% of my town, it got more chaotic. And that's when everything I learned over the years started to make sense. You've heard me talk before about Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who was leading during times of war. Constant chaos was around him. And yet, in the middle of that chaos, he would write calm, grounded thoughts to himself. His core belief was simple. Chaos is external. Peace, however, is internal. In other words, there are things you can control, and there are things you can't. You accept reality as it is, and then you train your mind not to react to it automatically. One of the ideas the Stoics had was this. This is not happening to me. It's just happening. And that's a shift. Because we tend to make everything personal, like everything is centered around us. But sometimes life is just unfolding. Now, if you bring that into a more modern perspective, it's really about learning how to shift your state, your emotional state, how to move from fear or anger or disappointment to calm. You focus on what you want, not just what's wrong. You begin to feel peace before your circumstances actually change. You notice your thoughts. You choose something different because life is going to be chaotic. That's not something we get to avoid. But we do get to choose how we show up inside of it. You really do have two choices. You can let the chaos control you, or you can learn to stay in control of yourself within it. Because when you change your inner world, your outer experience begins to follow. And I know it's not always easy. I've lived it. I still live it. In a moment where everything around me was out of control, I found a way to hold on to something inside of me that wasn't. And that's the takeaway. Peace isn't something you find after everything settles down. It's something you choose, right smack dab in the middle of the mess. So maybe the question isn't, how do I get rid of chaos? Maybe the better question is, how do I stay grounded while it's happening? And you know what? Sometimes the chaos is going to take control. Sometimes you're not going to be able to ground yourself or calm down. And just know that that's okay. The beauty of this life is most of the time we get to do a do-over tomorrow. So as always, take care of your mind, and the rest has a better chance of falling into place. Until next time, this is Cece, and this is Cece Talks Life, real talk, real life.